Greetings, Father Joe here, your friendly neighborhood pastor coming to you from St. Patrick's Church in lovely Highland Mills, New York. Today I am not wearing my sin fighter suit, I am wearing my snow shoveling, salting sweater, I guess. We're kind of iced in here in the Hudson Valley. Today is the memorial of St. Anthony Abbot. And it is also the civil holiday for Martin Luther King. So it's got me thinking about a lot of things, and it may take me a little while to get all of this put together. So I apologize if I'm a little bit long today. In our first reading from 1 Samuel, Samuel says to Saul, "Though little in your own esteem, are you not the leader of the tribes of Israel?" And that got me thinking. Sometimes I think as Catholics we think, humility is the biggest virtue, and I think we misunderstand that. I think we say, in order for me to be humble, I've got to think little of myself, and that's not humility. Humility is the virtue of truth. And I'm going to come around to how I believe this should impact all of our views of dealing with rights politically. Yesterday, before the snow came, I was decompressing after Sunday masses, and frequently I do on Sundays after that I catch up on Facebook posts. And one of the Facebook posts that I love is Sherry Weidel, Forming Intentional Disciples. I think Sherry's one of the clearest thinking people in the Catholic world right now. I think she has a good finger on the pulse and a good plan for how we can turn the church around. In her post, which I will put a link in the in whatever you do on YouTube, but she quotes extensively from C.S. Lewis's The Weight of Glory, and I've quoted this in homilies, and I love it. So I'm going to read a bit of it. But with regard to evangelization and with regard to the rights of others. So, C.S. Lewis says, "It may be possible for each to think too much of his own potential glory. Hereafter, it is hardly possible for him to think too long or too deeply about that of his neighbor. The load or weight or burden of my neighbor's glory should be laid upon my back, a load so heavy that only humility can carry it, and the backs of the proud will be broken." He continues, "It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses." Think about that. Sherry Weidel is applying this to evangelizing. Do I evangelize? Do I share my faith? In explicit evangelizing, of sharing my faith, talking to people, but also in the way I live my life, working for rights, the rights of others. That is part of evangelizing. I know people who have become Catholic because of the church's social doctrine. And only after they become Catholic do they get the rest of it, or do they, put it into context. But the glory that God has put in others, sometimes we refer to this as being made in the image and likeness of God. C.S. Lewis is showing us how this is practically, how we can practically think of this. All right? It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest, most uninteresting person you can talk to may one be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long, we are in some degree helping each other to one or another of these two destinations. Do you think too little of yourself? Are you too little in your own estimation? We have been called. By our baptism, we have been made priest, prophet, and king. What are we doing with those gifts? Are we helping people to heaven? Or are we simply sitting back and saying, and this is Shara Waddell's part, have we grown kind of lax and said, well, God's going to bring everybody to heaven, which is a nice way to let ourselves off the hook. But if we recognize this glory, God's glory that he has given to everyone and that he's made us for, why would we not help people get to heaven? Instead, we take this argument of whether some people get to heaven and some don't as an argument about why God, might be mean or unfair. Let's look at it from the other side. God isn't too mean or too unfair. He came down in the person of Jesus Christ and he died for us. What are we willing to do? Are we willing to go not all the way to the cross, but are we willing to do little things to help other people get to heaven? It is with the awe and circumspection proper to them that we should conduct all our dealings with one another, all friendships, all loves, all play, all politics, all respecting of the rights of others. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Think about that in terms of rights. And we're coming up on the pro-life march in Washington. Can I say that I am interested in the rights of the poor, but not in the unborn? Or can I say that I'm interested in the rights of African Americans, but not in the rights of women? We can't say I'm in favor of this group and not that group. Am I in favor of the rights of the unborn, but not of the rights of women? These are difficult issues, but they're a lot easier if we look at every person as containing the glory of God and how much we should treasure that person or these people. C.S. Lewis continues, nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. How can I treat any other person with less respect? If I could see that person's dignity. By the way, this happens. This person, it happens to me every now and then. Somebody gets mad or they do something and then they find out I'm a priest and go, oh, I'm sorry. I would never do that, Father. But they say that because they realize I'm a priest. Would they have done that if they didn't know I was a priest? And the answer is yes, they would have. They just did. So in our case, am I treating other people in a way where, oh my gosh, if I realized their glory and their honor and their dignity, I would say, oh my gosh, oh, I didn't mean that. I would never do that. but we can do that ahead of time. So C.S. Lewis continues. He says, next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. And if he or she is your Christian neighbor, he or she is holy in almost the same way. For in him or her also Christ, the glorifier and the glorified. Glory himself is truly hidden. Wow. Think about that as your neighbor. Think about that as your enemy. Next to the Blessed Sacrament, your enemy is the holiest object present to your senses. The glory of God is hidden in that person. So, Sherry Weidel says, evangelization is fundamentally about being willing to carry the weight or the burden of your neighbor's potential glory. That is a big challenge. So, a lot to think about there. God bless you.